Hello, I'm Shanann, and for 17 years, my role in my own family was never daughter, never guest, just the babysitter. Every celebration, every gathering, I was there, not to be seen, but to serve. They called it love, but love doesn't forget your birthday or silence your dreams. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people who are supposed to love you? Tell me in the comments. Spring in Asheville meant heavy pollen, cracked sidewalks warmed by the sun, and my mother's endless family gatherings. I parked down the street from her house like always, my car blending into a line of shiny SUVs, none of which belonged to me. The air smelled faintly of barbecue smoke and fresh-cut grass, almost enough to mask the tight feeling crawling up my spine. 17 years. 17 years of being the designated babysitter, the reliable background character in a movie I didn't star in. I stood at the curb for a moment, watching the bursts of laughter spill out from the open windows. Bright decorations draped the porch. Inside, I knew, polite smiles would flash, glasses would clink, and I would be invisible. I adjusted the strap of my canvas tote bag and forced my legs to move up the driveway. The front door was open. Darlene spotted me first, waving an absent hand. "Take care of the kids, honey. We're busy getting everything ready." No hello, no welcome, no thanks. I caught a glimpse of Jody, my sister, already gliding through the kitchen with a wine glass in hand, Kelly trailing behind her with that same distracted smile she always wore when she didn't want to get involved. Nobody even looked my way again. The living room was a whirlwind of balloons and screaming toddlers. I lowered myself onto the couch, already reaching out to separate Emma and Ethan from fighting over a stuffed dinosaur. It was muscle memory by now, breaking up squabbles, wiping spills, dodging flying toys like I was part of the furniture. At one point, a vase crashed to the floor. I crouched to clean it up before Darlene could notice and wrinkle her nose. From the kitchen, I heard her voice, warm and glowing, praising Jody's new corporate award as if she had single-handedly solved world hunger. "And Shanann?" a neighbor asked brightly. There was a pause, almost too long. Then Darlene laughed. "Oh, she helps out where she can." It was like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water over me. I tightened my grip on the broken porcelain shards in my hands, willing myself not to cry, not to react. The day stretched on in a series of chaotic snapshots, spilled soda on my shirt, a child tugging at my hair, laughter that never included me. Every once in a while, I'd catch my reflection in the glossy window panes, blurred, barely there. When dusk finally rolled over the neighborhood, I slipped out onto the porch. Nobody noticed. The air was cooler now, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the first brave blooms of late spring. I tilted my head back, looking at the faint stars smeared across the darkening sky. Maybe this was the last time I let them pretend I didn't exist. The morning sun spilled lazily over Mom's front porch as I climbed the steps, my stomach fluttering with a foolish kind of hope. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today they would remember it was my birthday without me having to remind them. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and took a breath before stepping inside. The house was already buzzing. Jody was there first, holding a steaming mug of coffee and tapping furiously on her phone. Kelly, her baby bump showing more now, perched herself on a stool in the kitchen, scrolling through recipes she clearly had no intention of actually cooking. Darlene swooped toward me the second she saw me, air-kissing my cheek. "Sweetheart, perfect timing. Can you watch Emma and Ethan? We're getting the lunch ready. It's a surprise." My heart stumbled for a moment. A surprise. Maybe they had remembered after all. I nodded, trying not to read too much into it, and took the kids outside where the trampoline sagged under last night's rain. 2 hours later, after mediating a dozen arguments over who got which swing and wiping more than one bloody knee, I wandered back inside to find the surprise fully set. A celebration cake with Kelly's name in bold blue frosting. A congratulations on baby number 2 party. There was no mention of my birthday. No cake, no card, no candles, nothing. I stood by the doorway, invisible, as Darlene clinked her wine glass and gave a speech about family, about sacrifice, about how we all must do our part. She caught my eye and smiled the kind of smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Speaking of helping, Shanann, honey, we were thinking, Kelly's going to need a lot of support once the baby comes. You're so good with the kids. Maybe hold off on those art classes, yeah? It wasn't a request. Before I could even open my mouth, Darlene pulled out her phone and tapped rapidly. An email popped into my inbox 20 minutes later. Your class registration has been canceled. Refund processed. The world around me dimmed, the clatter of forks on plates becoming a dull roar in my ears. I sat through the rest of lunch, cleaning up plates no one handed to me directly, catching cold stares whenever one of the kids misbehaved. Jody bragged about a big promotion she was up for, laughing so brightly even the neighbors chimed in with their congratulations. One of them, a woman I didn't know, turned to me and asked, "And what do you do, dear? Are you still between jobs?" I opened my mouth, but Darlene answered first. "Shanann helps out around here. She's so valuable to us." I excused myself before anyone could see the heat rushing to my cheeks. In the kitchen, I stared at my reflection in the microwave door, blurry, smudged, as if I were an afterthought even in my own skin. Later that night, in the silence of my small rented room above the town bakery, I opened my laptop. The art school's email glared back at me. Enrollment canceled. I hovered over the screen, my finger trembling slightly above the delete button. And then I clicked. I closed the laptop with a soft snap, my throat tight but dry. They could cancel my enrollment. They could deny me a cake, a candle, a card, but they couldn't cancel what still lived inside me. The clink of plates and soft hum of conversation floated through the open windows as I made my way into the backyard. The Sunday lunch was in full swing, tables sagging under trays of casseroles, cupcakes arranged in perfect circles. I carried a stack of paper plates toward the food table, pretending to be busy, pretending not to notice how no one really noticed me. I paused near the kitchen window, just as Darlene's voice rose above the chatter. "We used that refund from Shanann's little class to get Ethan that gaming console he wanted so badly." Such a smart decision, really. Family comes first. The words hit harder than I expected. I tightened my grip on the plates, feeling the edges bite into my palms. My canceled art class. My quiet attempt at something more, reduced to pixels on a screen for a child who wouldn't even know the difference. I turned away quickly, swallowing the bitterness before it could spill over. Lunch dragged on with the same endless small talk, the same shallow toasts. But then Darlene stood up, tapping her wine glass for attention. "Let's take a moment to celebrate Jody," she said, beaming. "Our shining star, just promoted to senior marketing director." Applause erupted around the table. Jody rose modestly, brushing non-existent crumbs from her slacks, soaking in the admiration like a flower in sunlight. I stayed seated, half standing to grab a juice box that Emma had dropped, wiping it off on my skirt. No one even glanced my way. No acknowledgement, no nod, not even a mention that I existed at the table. Darlene's speech went on, words blending into a wash of pride and promises about carrying on the family legacy, while I sat hunched at the far end, invisible even in my own skin. After dessert, as the family lingered under the late afternoon sun, Marlene appeared with a large, beautifully wrapped box. My heart lifted for a brief, foolish second, until she handed it to Jody. Inside was a handmade quilt, rich with deep blues and golds, stitched together with care and years of tradition. The kind of heirloom passed down generation after generation. Something permanent, something meaningful. I watched Jody press the quilt to her chest, tears gathering in her eyes, and I realized there was nothing for me. No thread of connection, no legacy waiting in a cedar chest, just empty air. Later, when they gathered for a group photo, I hesitated before joining. A few people shifted to make space, but not for me. The photographer snapped the picture, capturing the proud smiles and happy chaos, while I stood half in frame, half forgotten. It was only when they shared the photo on social media that I saw it. I wasn't in it at all, cropped out like an afterthought, or maybe not even that. Maybe I had never been part of the picture to begin with. I drifted inside and sat by the window, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, watching the garden blur under the lowering sun. A neighbor passing by glanced through the open door and smiled warmly. It must be nice being part of a family like this. I smiled back automatically, the muscles of my face moving without permission. But inside, something shifted. Something cracked in a way I knew couldn't be patched. The scent of grilled meat and sweet iced tea floated over the park, mingling with the sticky warmth of a late summer afternoon. Folding chairs dotted the grassy field. Red and white checkered tablecloths clung desperately to the tables against lazy gusts of wind. Laughter rolled like a low tide across the picnic grounds. It was the kind of afternoon that, in someone else's life, might have been perfect. I balanced a tray of sodas carefully in my hands, weaving my way between cousins and distant relatives I barely knew. My arms ached, but the weight in my chest was heavier. Jody's voice cut through the hum of conversation. She was telling a group gathered by the picnic tables about the community fair, the one I had spent weeks painting posters for. She laughed, tossing her hair, her voice carrying. You should have seen it. Looked like something out of a preschool art class. Polite chuckles bubbled up around her. I froze mid-step, the cups on my tray trembling. No one corrected her. No one even hesitated. My cheeks burned, and I ducked my head, willing myself invisible. For the rest of the afternoon, I kept busy, clearing plates, refilling drinks, picking up stray napkins fluttering across the grass. People looked through me, around me, never at me. When Darlene introduced family members to some old church friends, she beamed proudly at Jody and Kelly. When she reached me, she hesitated just long enough for the air to curdle, then breezed right past. Later, an older woman I didn't recognize patted my arm kindly. It's so nice when extended family can come visit. I smiled and nodded, unable to summon the energy to explain that I wasn't visiting, that I had been here all along. The children played nearby, their shouts ringing out over the park. Emma, in a fit of excitement, ran to Kelly and threw her arms around her legs, chirping, "Mommy!" Everyone laughed, Kelly too, ruffling Emma's hair. But no one corrected her. No one said, "That's not Mommy." I felt something inside me tilt, like a slow, inevitable shift in the ground beneath my feet. As the sun began to sag low behind the trees, Darlene corralled everyone for a group photo. I lingered at the edge of the crowd, unsure whether to step forward or fade back. In the end, I did what I always did, stood slightly behind, just outside the tight circle of arms and smiles. The photographer adjusted his lens, called out, "Say cheese?" and clicked. Later, scrolling through social media, I would see the photo. A happy family, arms wrapped around each other, wide grins against a golden sunset. I wasn't in it, not cropped out, not blurred in the background. Simply, not there at all. The smell of cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee should have been comforting, but as I stepped into Mom's kitchen that morning, it only made my skin itch. The brunch was already in full swing. Laughter floated from the living room, the clinking of plates and silverware, a background chorus I no longer felt a part of. I adjusted the strap of my purse across my shoulder and made my way toward the dining room. Darlene stood by the buffet table, her face alight as she introduced Jody to a neighbor I barely recognized. "Our star," she said, squeezing Jody's shoulder, "senior marketing director at just 32. And Kelly," she continued, gesturing proudly toward my middle sister, "expecting her second baby. She's due this winter." The neighbor smiled warmly, eyes crinkling behind her glasses. "And you?" she asked, turning to me. Darlene gave a tight laugh before I could open my mouth. "Oh, Shanann's just visiting for a bit. Always wonderful to have family come around." I nodded politely, feeling the words lodge somewhere deep inside my chest. Visiting. As if I hadn't lived less than 10 minutes away my entire adult life. As if I hadn't spent years cleaning up after these very same gatherings, folding napkins, mopping up spilled lemonade, managing tantrums that weren't even my responsibility. I drifted through the brunch like a shadow, refilling coffee cups no one asked me to refill, clearing plates no one thanked me for. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was used to this. But the truth gnawed at me, a quiet, constant scrape. After the meal, as people wandered out to the backyard to enjoy the mild autumn sun, Marlene caught my eye. She motioned for me to follow her into the kitchen. She moved slowly these days, but there was still a sharpness to her gaze that no amount of time could dull. Once we were alone, she pressed a small, sealed envelope into my hand. "Don't open it here," she whispered. I nodded, slipping it into my purse without looking. Later, in the privacy of the tiny bathroom tucked between the laundry room and the pantry, I tore the envelope open with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter from an out-of-state art academy. Acceptance letter, full scholarship. My breath caught. Marlene had applied for me. She had seen what no one else had bothered to. For the first time in years, a flicker of something alive stirred in my chest. Not just hope, possibility, freedom. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it deep into my purse like a secret talisman. I didn't tell Darlene. I didn't tell Jody or Kelly. It was mine. A tiny, precious piece of something that belonged only to me. As brunch wound down, guests drifting away in pairs and small clusters, Darlene wrapped an arm around Jody's waist, laughing brightly for the remaining stragglers. I stood on the porch, half in, half out of the house, watching them. It struck me then, with a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. I had been a guest in this family for years, a helper, an accessory. I touched the edge of the envelope inside my bag and whispered so quietly even I barely heard it. "Maybe it's time I leave without asking permission." The rain tapped against the windshield in a steady rhythm as I sat in the driveway, hands locked around the steering wheel, unwilling to step inside. The Sunday lunch was supposed to be routine, another box checked on the list of obligations. I should have been used to it by now. Inside, the house buzzed with the familiar sounds of clinking dishes and polite small talk. I forced myself out of the car, my shoes crunching against the gravel path slick with fallen leaves. I hadn't even closed the door behind me before I caught it, a sharp whisper slicing through the noise. "She's poisoning Shanann against us," Darlene hissed, her voice low but venomous, always filling her head with nonsense. If she keeps it up, maybe we just stop including her altogether. I didn't need to look to know who she was talking about. Marlene, my only ally, the one person who had believed I deserved more. Something tightened painfully in my chest. I slipped through the hallways unnoticed, the words sticking to my skin like cold mist. Lunch felt like slow suffocation. Darlene was in fine form, doling out charm and sly jabs in equal measure. As I passed the mashed potatoes, she caught my eye, smiling sweetly as she said to the table, "And let's not forget Shanann's little hobby. I swear it looks just like the finger paintings Emma brought home from preschool." A ripple of laughter followed, polite but unmistakably sharp. I set the bowl down harder than necessary, my face burning. Kelly glanced away. Jody smirked into her wineglass. Russell said nothing. I bit down the bitter words bubbling in my throat. My scholarship letter felt heavier in my purse than any plate I carried. Later, when the conversation turned to Jody's promotion, again, I tried to speak, just once. I mentioned the art program, how hard I had worked, how much it meant. Darlene waved her hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Even a broken clock is right twice a day," she said, laughing like it was the cleverest thing she'd ever said. And just like that, the moment was gone, swallowed by polite conversation and the clinking of silverware. I didn't taste my food. I didn't hear the rest of their chatter. I was there, but not really. When lunch ended, I mumbled an excuse and fled to my car. I sat there for a long time, engine humming softly, the cold beginning to seep through my jacket. I pulled the acceptance letter from my purse, the paper trembling in my hands. Looking at it now, I realized it wasn't just an opportunity. It was a lifeline. "I'm not staying here to rot," I whispered into the stillness, the words settling in the air around me like a promise. The house buzzed with preparations, every surface polished to gleam under the winter sun slanting through the windows. Garment bags hung from doorknobs. The smell of hairspray and expensive perfume clung to the air like a second skin. A prestigious charity gala, Mom's Crowning Glory, was unfolding, and I was painting posters for the lobby. I worked carefully, proud of the design I had crafted, a blend of soft winter blues and bold silver lettering. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine my name printed neatly at the bottom, a tiny acknowledgement that I existed. Darlene breezed into the room, inspecting the poster with a critical eye. "Sign it Jody's name," she said. voice casual but final. No one wants a no name on something this important. I stood there, brush frozen in my hand, as the words hung between us, suffocating. I nodded without arguing, swallowing the sour taste crawling up my throat. I printed Jody's name carefully at the bottom corner, erasing myself yet again. As everyone bustled around getting ready for the gala, I lingered awkwardly in the hallway, waiting for someone to hand me an invitation, to tell me where we were meeting, what time to be ready. No one did. Hours passed. I finally asked Kelly, voice low enough to be casual, "What time are we leaving tonight?" She paused, shifting uncomfortably. "Oh, it's kind of limited seating. Mainly just immediate family. And their guests," she said, not meeting my eyes. I nodded as if it made sense, as if it didn't rip something loose inside me. Russell mumbled something about how, next time maybe, but I had already stopped listening. They piled into cars, laughter trailing behind them like streamers. I stood on the back porch, watching their taillights dissolve into the growing dusk. The cold bit into my skin, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I sat there until the stars pricked holes into the sky, the envelope with the acceptance letter heavy in my coat pocket, grounding me. For the first time, I grieved. Not the event, not the poster, not even the lack of invitation. I grieved the family I had spent my entire life chasing. I sat still long after the night swallowed the yard whole, my breath ghosting out in small white clouds. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was done. This time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I pressed a hand over the envelope in my pocket, felt the crisp promise beneath my fingers, and whispered into the silence, "This time I'm inviting myself to my own future." The house glittered under the sharp glow of string lights, every inch of it curated for the holiday season, ready for photographs and praise. I slipped in through the side door unnoticed, clutching my carefully wrapped painting to my chest like a secret. Inside, the noise washed over me. A tide of laughter, clinking glasses, murmured admiration directed everywhere but toward me. I weaved through the crowd, shrinking smaller, until I found a quiet spot by the kitchen entrance. That's when I heard it. Darlene's voice, clear as a bell, floating above the chatter. Honestly, sometimes I forget Shanann's even around. She's not like the others. The words hit harder than any slap could have. I straightened my spine instinctively, forcing a smile onto my face like armor, even as something small and tender inside me withered away. I drifted through the party, painting in hand, waiting for the right moment. It was a celebration after all. Maybe this small offering could bridge the unspoken chasm between us. Maybe, despite everything, it could mean something. Darlene called for everyone's attention with a bright clap of her hands. I stepped forward shyly, extending the painting. It depicted the old oak tree in Mom's backyard, the one we all used to climb as kids, the one that had stood silent witness to years of family barbecues and birthday parties. Someone oohed politely. Jody glanced up from her phone long enough to smirk. Darlene took the package, peeling the wrapping paper with theatrical care. For a fleeting second, her mouth twitched into what might have been a real smile. Then, with a careless flick of her wrist, she knocked the canvas off the table. It landed face down on the hardwood floor with a dull thud, the frame splintering, the canvas tearing down the middle. A thin ripple of awkward laughter ran through the room. Darlene shrugged, her tone light. It's not like it was a real masterpiece anyway. I didn't move. My hands stayed limp at my sides. No one rushed to pick it up. No one even looked particularly sorry. Something inside me, something I had spent years patching, ignoring, forgiving, gave way. I crouched slowly, gathering the broken painting into my arms. The tear split the oak tree cleanly in two. I traced the rip with my thumb, marveling at how fitting it was. They had broken it, just like they had broken every small piece of me they had touched. But not all the way. I stood up, placing the shattered painting gently on the nearest table. Darlene's laughter trailed off mid-sentence when she caught my gaze. For the first time, I didn't look away. I turned on my heel and walked through the crowded living room, through the buzzing kitchen, through the cold December night, without saying a word. As the front door clicked shut behind me, the winter air rushed into my lungs, sharp and clean. They broke it, but they didn't break me. The world outside my window was a sheet of white, the snow softening the sharp edges of the sidewalks and cars below. I sat on the couch, cradling a mug of coffee between my hands, letting the silence of my small apartment wrap around me like a worn blanket. The text had come in early that morning, a cousin letting me know, in a half-apologetic tone, that Darlene was telling everyone I had attacked her at the last family gathering, that I had disrespected her in front of guests. The words should have ignited rage, should have driven me to lash out, to defend myself. But I just stared at the message, the anger flickering and dying before it could fully catch. I thought about typing a reply, crafting a careful, blistering rebuttal. My fingers hovered over the screen, the words sharp and ready. Then I erased them. What was the point? I set the phone down on the coffee table and stared at the quiet world outside. It was no longer my job to fix their version of me. It never had been. Instead, I turned my focus to the boxes still half unpacked in the corner, to the acceptance letter pinned to the fridge, to the art supplies waiting patiently by the window. My future wasn't waiting for their approval. It had already begun. Later, Marlene knocked softly at the door, her arms full of homemade cookies wrapped in crinkled cellophane. She came in without fanfare, settling into the chair opposite me like she belonged there. We talked about simple things, the weather, her stubborn cat, the art program starting in January. Not once did we mention the family or the lies threading through them like poison vines. At one point, I found myself whispering, "What if I'm always broken?" Marlene didn't flinch. She reached across the coffee table, taking my hand in hers, warm and steady. "We're all broken, sweetheart," she said. "We just learn how to carry the cracks." The afternoon slipped away gently, the snow outside growing deeper, erasing the sharp lines of the world. After Marlene left, I stood in the middle of my living room, the framed painting in my hands. A single open window, snow drifting lazily through it. It wasn't grand, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I hung it on the wall above the couch, stepping back to admire it in the fading light. It wasn't home yet, but it was mine. Looking back now, I realized that walking away wasn't the hardest part. It was believing I deserved to. It's easy to lose yourself when the people who should love you the most make you feel invisible. But healing starts when you stop asking for permission to exist. If you've ever felt like the extra piece at your own family table, know this. You are not less because someone failed to see your worth. Your story, your dreams, your voice, they matter. They always have. I wonder, have you ever had to rebuild yourself after being broken by the ones you trusted most? What helped you find your way back? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please comment 1 or share where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. Your journey matters, and you're not alone.